Hello, 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 and welcome back to our weekly Sunday school lesson. I am Elder Latanya Milliken of the All Nations Church in Oakland, California. My pastor is Bishop Terrence L. Milliken, and this is Lesson 10 in our winter quarter. The date of our lesson is February the 5th, 2023. This week we're in the book of James. We will be highlighting the first chapter, the first through the 8th verse, and then we'll skip over and go to the 12th verse all the way through to the 18th verse. Our subject today, blessings amid trials. And so we're going to be talking about trials and temptations and struggles today. But we're going to learn why from the book of James, why they are important in our lives. We don't like them. I know I don't. But they serve a purpose in our lives. And so before we get started, I want to invite you to our services are on Sunday at 11 o'clock. You're welcome to come. In fact, we'd be happy to have you. The address is 5815 San Pablo Avenue, Oakland, California, 94607. And so if you're in the Bay Area, if you're visiting the Bay Area, you're welcome to drop by. We also have Bible study on Wednesday night at 7 and prayer meeting on Monday at 6:30. So you're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome. Now let's just give some shout outs. So if you are celebrating a birthday, anniversary, wedding, whatever, just a new baby. I've got some friends that are having a baby on Monday, and that's Francisco and his wife. Lots of luck. They're having a daughter, and so I pray everything goes well with their new addition to their family. So whatever you're celebrating, may God bless your celebration. So let's just get into our lesson today. If you have your favorite translations, go ahead and turn your Bibles to James. The James's way is in the New Testament, almost close to the end. And just park there while I just kind of give you a quick introduction of our lesson. And so today we're talking about trials, and James is going to do a great job at letting us see we face trials and there's a purpose. There's a purpose for trials. But who likes trials? Who likes struggles? No one likes struggles and trials. I know I don't like them. That's why they're called struggles, because they're hard. They're hard to deal with. But there are in our lives for a purpose. And so the lesson helps us to understand the purpose is to make our faith stronger. And so we will learn too that God does not cause the trials, but permits them. And so I don't want to get ahead of myself. And so before we get to reading, when it comes to, this lesson for me in talking about struggles and trials, I read it, and whenever someone talks about, or whenever I hear about trials and struggles, I feel a certain kind of way, because I don't enjoy trials. I don't enjoy struggles. So this lesson really helped me to understand the purposes of trials and why they come in our lives. So I'm grateful to this lesson to learn. It kind of eased something. I prefer my trials and my struggles to show up unannounced. I don't like to see them coming. I don't like to welcome them. You can just show up and then do what you got to do for me to learn my lesson and keep it moving. And so, I've been told that sometimes I make trials and struggles look easy. And I had to noodle on that. I had to noodle on why anyone would say that, because trials are what they are. They are difficult. They are hard. However, you go through them understanding that God, there's a purpose for them. And even though sometimes we know this, we get caught up in the struggle, we get caught up in the trial, we get caught up in the hardship, and it's easy to forget the purpose, and it's easy to forget that we're not alone in this situation or whatever we're going through. And I kind of kind of compared this, and we're going to get to our reading, but I kind of compared this to also, you know that I've been, well, for those of you who don't know, I've been in banking and finance for 38 years and in a leadership role. And there have been times where people would say, well, Latanya, you make it seem easy. You make it look easy. And people come and, young people come and start work with me. And then they, all of a sudden, they want to be in leadership too. However, it's not easy. It's not always easy. There are good days. There are bad days. And in order to get where I am, you just can't give up. You have to take the good with the bad. And you've got to prepare yourself. And once you prepare yourself, then you have to use what you have. And thinking about what I do as a leader, I have to answer questions every day, all day. They come at you. You got to answer the question, know the question. If you don't know the answer. If you don't know the answer, you got to know where to go. You got to be nice and friendly and professional all day to sometimes ignorant people and arrogant people. You have to lead by example. You can't deviate from wrong. You have to always be doing the right thing, because if you deviate an inch, they will deviate a yardstick. And all of these things, you've got to be on all the time. You've got to sacrifice, because everyone is not on the level you are on. So these things sometimes are difficult. Sometimes they are hard. But if I make them seem simple, if not simple, if I make them seem easy, then yes, people will want to be leaders as well. Likewise, in our trials, if we murmur and complain and cry and look pitiful, who's going to want to be a Christian? That's not the example. So we have to understand, and James is going to help us. We've got to understand the purpose of our trials. And it appears sometimes that believers are always struggling, always going through something. But that's for us to grow and our faith to grow, to be more like Christ. And so we've got to do a better job at handling. I'm encouraging you. Let's do a better job at handling our trials, understanding that God is with us. And James is going to help us do that. So let's do some reading, and we're going to learn a little something on how we do this. All right. So if you have your favorite translations, James 1:1. This letter, as we begin reading, is from James, a slave of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm writing to the 12 tribes, Jewish believers scattered abroad, greetings. Verse 2, dear brothers and sisters, when troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. If you need wisdom, here's how we get through it. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. But when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver, for a person with divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of a sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Verse 8, their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything they do. Now we're going to hop over to the 12th, get the reading out of the way. Verse 12, God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. I'll read that again. God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Afterwards, they will receive a crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. Verse 13, and remember, when you are being tempted to say, God is tempting me, God is never tempting. God is never tempted to do wrong. And he never tempts anyone else. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions. And when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. So don't be misled, my dear brothers and sisters. Whatever is good and perfect comes down from God, our Father, who created all lights in heaven. He never changes or casts a shifting shadow. He chooses to give birth to us by giving us his true word. And we, out of all creation, became his prized possession. So here we're talking about, what was happening in James' time. The Christians were being persecuted. Specifically, the ones that were not as prosperous or wealthy as the others, they were being persecuted. And so James was encouraging them and letting them know, and these were all over the place. He said this letter to the 12 tribes. Well, there was not 12 tribes then, because they were all over, the Jews were all over the place by then. But they were scattered abroad. And so he says, when trouble comes, consider it an opportunity for great joy. And that's when you think about your flesh, when you think about hard times, when you think about struggles, you don't associate that with joy. But there can be spiritual joy, because these trials are here to test our faith. And why is that important? Why is it important that our faith is tested? We understand as believers that it's impossible to please God without faith. And we have to have faith during these times to call on God and to lean on him and to trust him through these difficult situations. And so as we endure, it gives us an opportunity to grow and to perfectly develop. And then we don't need anything. And so James he goes on to share that when you go through these trials and these temptations and struggles, just ask God for wisdom. You know, it's one thing to have knowledge, but it's wisdom that gives you the ability to carry out that knowledge. And so James is saying, ask God for wisdom. He will give you wisdom. He will give you wisdom in abundance. He will give it to you because he's a generous God. But when you ask him, don't ask him doubting. Ask him confidently. Because when you ask God for things and you doubt, then you're double-minded. You're divided. You're like the wave of the sea that's tossed to and fro. And so you can't be dependent on it. And so when you ask and you don't believe and you don't trust, then the likelihood is that you will not get what you're asking for. So James is really helping us with understanding. And so he goes on to say that those who are patient in their trials will be blessed. And so he also shares that sometimes the trials come in various sources, and some of them are because we make bad decisions and we make bad choices. So we bring trials and struggles on ourselves. But James wants for us to fully understand that trials, they don't come from God. God is not tempted and does not tempt us, but he allows it. He allows the trial. He allows the struggle. He allows the temptation to test us, to allow us to grow. Struggles cause us to grow. It's just like, you put that pressure on that muscle, and that muscle gets stronger, that resistance. And when you're working out, that I don't body build. I have some weights at home. I mean, I'm at home, but I have some weights in the room, and I do weights. And it's that resistance that builds that muscle. And so it's just human nature. And so the struggles and the trying builds our faith muscle. But there are sometimes we are tempted, and we yield to the temptation. We yield to our sinful desires because we have a sinful nature. And so because at times we are tempted, and the enemy will come and tempt us, we don't have to yield. You can say no to temptation. Jesus proved that you can say no to temptation. And people prove it every day. You can say no to temptation. But when you don't say no to temptation and you yield to temptation because of your sinful desires or your lusts, that is sin. Yielding to temptation. Not being tempted is a sin, but yielding to temptation is a sin. And unforgiven sin has a wage. The wages of unforgiven sin is death. The wages of unforgiven sin is death. In fact, we all will die because we all sin. God told Adam, if you eat of that fruit, you shall surely die. Or if you disobey. Some say it's fruit, some say it's something else. But you shall surely die. And as humanity, when we choose to sin, and we all sin, we shall surely die. But if we accept Jesus Christ, we shall be saved. But if we continue in sin, and it's unforgiven sin, then we die, and then there's a second death. And that's being permanently separated from God, who is all good, who is all righteous, who is all loving, who is all everything that is good, and all good things. And as our lesson wraps up, all good things come from God. So don't get it twisted. Every blessing, every good thing, when you walk out into nature and you see the beauty, it comes from God. When you see the beauty in you, the good in you, it all comes from God. So all good things and all blessing come from God, not temptation, not trials, not struggles. But when you have those things, you can call on God and you can pray and ask him for wisdom, and he will give you wisdom, and he will help. God help, and he will help in the time of trouble. And so that sort of wraps up our lesson. Let's just see what the aim of the lesson is today. The aim of the lesson is to understand that the purpose of trials and temptation is to develop patience. To teach that trials and temptations in the lives of believers help make them strong in their faith. The application is to help students learn. We help people learn to endure trials and temptations. When we make it look easy, and I don't know if easy is the right word, but when we trust in the Lord through our trials and our temptations and our struggles, when we call on him and when we get through it and we share the testimony of how we get through it or how we got through it with the help of the Lord, that's how we help others. That's how we make it seem. I don't want to say that word easy, but it's the only word I can find. knowing that the Lord is perfecting their faith. So to help students learn to endure trials and temptation, knowing that the Lord is perfecting their faith. We go through so that we can grow. The conclusion of our lesson, this week's lesson, has brought home some very important truths. The Christian goes through trials for a divine purpose. The crown of life awaits him when he has finished the race. It is through those times of trials and temptation that God develops Christian character in each of us. With wisdom from God, we can endure even the most difficult times. He has promised to stay with us to the very end. And that ends our lesson. Next week, we'll be in 2 Corinthians, the 1st chapter, the 3rd through the 11th verse. We will be in blessings of God, comfort us, so that we are equipped to comfort others. It's all about helping others. So with that said, share this with someone else. Help them to understand that trials and struggles and temptations, they will come, but it's there to help us be patient and to grow in our faith. Like it, subscribe it, and share it. Have a wonderful weekend.